So today's guest is Seb Alex. It's a bit of an interesting conversation today because Seb Alex actually was invited to Greenwich as a speaker for public lecture series by School of Design at the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Sciences. And this talk was organized by Elena Papadaki and Jovita Olzek and the School of Design. Now, before getting into the talk and before playing the conversation, I think it might be useful to add that the conversation, especially the questions, were asked from an intention to explore this nuanced topic rather than prescribe to an inherent set of rules which might be right. So this is a very complicated issue in our modern era. And if anyone agrees or disagrees or have comments around this conversation, please do not hesitate to contact myself. The email would be there. And yeah, let's jump into it. So, Seb, thank you so much for coming here. We call this podcast Scholars in Spotlight, but I think this might be the last one. We call it like that, and we're going to change it. So, thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Perfect. So, we're going to talk about today sustainability. We are talking about veganism. We're talking about food, future of food, maybe what habits we have and how we can have this debate, which seems very polarizing, but also it's just dire right now, like we talk about it. So let's maybe start from where your story began, because what we will talk today would come from a lot of your experiences. So maybe it might be useful if we, share some of yours.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I'm born and raised in Lebanon, and growing up, my brother one day found a cat on the street and he brought him home. And my parents were very strict about bringing animals to live with us. But eventually they let the cat stay with us, and I was more of a fan of dogs, so I wasn't very happy about it. But the cat acted more like a dog than a cat, so I was very happy with that. So I became like a big fan of the cat. I really loved him. And then one day my mom said, she's considering removing his nails because he's destroying all the furniture by operating him, basically. And I started arguing with her, and we had this huge fight, like over and over and over again. And I realized that I literally had no power. I mean, she's the mother, she decides what she's going to do. So the only option I had left, which is what I did, was launch a Facebook group against my own mom. And I invited all my friends into the group because they all knew about the cat, and everyone was leaving comments, what they think about this cruel decision of my mother. And I used to read the comments out loud in the house until under pressure she decided not to do it. So we claimed victory, and the cat managed to keep his nails. And eventually, one day I was talking to a friend, and she said, I really appreciate what you did about your cat. She was vegetarian, by the way. She's like, yeah, I really appreciate what you did with your cat, but I'm going to be honest with you. Like, you're not really an animal lover. You just love your cat. Like, you still eat meat. You still eat chicken and fish. You still go hunting, So when she said that, I felt very offended because I realized she's calling me a hypocrite. And I started arguing back, and then eventually she's like, let's stop fighting. I'll show you a video and then we continue. And she showed me a 12-minute long video called Meat Your Meat, which basically consisted of slaughterhouse footage from all around the world. And at the end of the video, I was like, I had an ethical dilemma. Like, how do I really justify paying for this now? Especially knowing that I can, just like my friend, not pay for it and live healthily. And because I couldn't really justify, I became vegetarian. And I wasn't happy about it, don't get me wrong. So I became vegetarian, and then for 8 long years I was vegetarian. And then eventually, I was vegetarian because I didn't know more. I didn't even know that something called veganism existed. 8 years after, I watched a documentary called Earthlings, which explains what speciesism is and actually explains every single industry that exploits animals, and speciesism is basically a type of discrimination based on the species of an animal. You know, that's literally what it is. So once I learned about that, I became a vegan as well.
Great. So there are two interesting things which you mentioned. It's like how someone who wants to be maybe active towards certain things, there's like a secret which you found, and there's a way forward towards it. But I think it would be interesting to talk about speciesism a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
It is very strange that we do love some of the animals more than maybe our own species, and then how we treat some of the species worse than maybe we treat robots somehow.
Of course.
So
I mean, the things we do to animals that we exploit, we wouldn't even do it to our worst enemy. We wouldn't even find it justifiable to torture a human in war like that, you know? And which is good. Like, I'm happy we don't justify that. But if we wouldn't even do it to someone who we think is guilty of something, why do we do it to someone who's completely innocent? Their only crime was being born in a certain species. You know, that's quite an extreme thing to do. Now, what I really find amazing about how society functions is the way that speciesism exists everywhere at all times, yet it's never talked about. It's just not on the table, you know. You'd be walking down the street and someone's walking next to you wearing fur, wearing leather, you know. It's like it's not there, but it's also there at all times. In the restaurants and everywhere you go, an animal has been abused or exploited in some way or another. And I believe that the reason why we don't talk about it is because we don't like it. And we don't like it because we feel guilty about it. As you said, we love, like, naturally, we love animals. And we also have a natural sense of justice. So it's not necessarily about compassion. You know, I used to make the mistake of saying, you know, veganism is about compassion. It's not at all about compassion. It's about justice, because you don't really have to love someone to be against them having their right, you know. Like, if I'm walking down the street and someone's getting physically attacked, I don't have to love them to protect them. You know, if I know that it's unjustified and they shouldn't be attacked or assaulted in any way, I'm going to do my best to stop it from happening. And basically what we do is we have made up this certain way of treating some animals different than others. For example, we do anything for our dogs and cats. Then when it comes to pigs and chickens and fish and cows and so many other animals, it's like they're no longer in our moral community, which is where the cognitive dissonance plays its part. And basically what I try to do is ask questions for people to realize that actually their core values and ethical beliefs align with mine. The only thing we don't have in common is the fact that their actions don't align with their core values. I do believe anyone who believes in human rights also believes in animal rights. A very simple example is the name the trait question. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's a philosophical approach to it. It basically says, what is the trait that these animals are lacking that if a human lacked, it would justify to treat humans the same way? You know, the most common answer is intelligence or self-awareness. Well, let's see if that's morally consistent. If you meet someone who's intellectually disabled, can you treat them the way we treat animals in this day and age? Of course not. If you agree with that, then you just like confirm that it's okay to massacre all intellectually disabled people or children, you know, or the elderly. If you don't agree with that, then you inherently come to the conclusion that we should abolish animal exploitation. So,
no, brilliant. I mean, it's brilliant what you are saying, and I think it would maybe more interesting to add a historical aspect to it, because we have been guilt-ridden a lot these days, and it sometimes makes it even harder to maybe move towards something which might help us, as you are saying, to see these points, maybe question our habits and our difference and dissonance between what ethically we believe and action-wise we do. I think fundamentally that's the thing which I had problem when I was young and I growing up. I would see that people would say the right things, but when it comes maybe a responsibility or maybe a point where you have to action it, the actions comes from a place of fear maybe or a place of just lack of initiative sometimes, mostly. But the point I wanted to mention it is that we didn't maybe get to the place of speciation as if it's going on forever by just some. It could be the arbitrary coincidence of evolution, but I think it would be interesting. I don't know what your point of view is, that at some point, maybe 30,000 years ago, when we were living somewhere in cruel places, it did make sense to maybe hunt some species.
Of course.
So I would like
Of
to,
course,
give that context, and then we can come here. So
Yeah.
no one thinks that this is a disconnected conversation.
Yeah. Of course. So, I mean, it's exactly what it is. Thousands of years ago, humans had no other choice than to hunt animals. And even when they hunted animals, they didn't hunt that much, just because hunting required so much energy that they didn't afford to waste, especially if you're going hungry. You're not going to waste all your energy for days just to hunt one huge animal. But they did hunt animals, and it was out of survival. Now, people can still argue whether or not it's the right thing to do. One thing we can all agree on is when you are in survival mode, you don't really think about morality or ethics and all these things. And I don't even think that. I don't even know how I would react in survival mode. There's a story of a plane that crashed. I don't know in which country. But it crashed on a mountain, and there were some survivors, and in order to survive, one guy had to eat his own dead grandmother's flesh. In today's society, when you don't have to do it for survival, that's one of the most sickening things you can do. But in survival mode, everything changes. So did we at some point in history have to do that to survive? Yeah, that's a fact. We had to do that. But just because we did it in the past, does it justify to continue doing so? There's so many things that we would do in survival mode, but they wouldn't be justified if we're doing it when we're not in survival mode. There's also the theory that when people started settling down, with the agriculture and everything that started, and they started having their farms, so instead of keeping on moving from one place to another, civilization started. That's also when they started realizing how they can start exploiting animals. So you keep the animals, you breed the specific ones that you like, that are producing more milk or this or that. And then the animals also became kind of a currency, because it's like a valuable belonging, right? Even they say with capitalism, capita comes from the Latin word, which is like the head of an animal, because that was the currency at the time, at a certain time in the past, of course. So we definitely have a past that for certain conditions made us do this thing. The question is, how do we in this day and age justify still doing it? If in survival mode you had to kill someone, that doesn't mean that today, like randomly walking down the street, you can kill someone. No,
it's true. I agree. It's interesting. Some people even say that agricultural society is the one, and I think I can quote a book, Sapiens. You will know. Yes. Where even the women became property.
Yes.
Somehow, because of that systematic understanding of collection, and then trading of your depth through females.
Yeah.
So of course that we can imagine that how speciation could have formed.
Yeah.
And even though if we all love people who are close to us, we all have this empathy scenario of in-group, out-group, in whatever scenario we are talking about. So yeah, we might have liked more animal more, and maybe less some of them, just because of our survival and whatever I've heard in the books regarding relations which human, which we forget that we are also animal.
Yes, of course.
Walking on the earth. That's the part where we do forget a lot. We put a tie on, we think that that's it. That just separates us from another animal, and that gives us rights maybe to treat anything we want however we want.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe this is a good example. You say that, okay, so we are now have this opportunity to maybe rethink some of the core aspects of our human diet, maybe what we have been doing it forever. I think it's the same thing to do with trauma, human trauma. I have had a conversation, and it's insane that because our parents and our parents of our parents had huge traumas, and we passed that on.
Yes.
and same habits, we pass this on. So I just see this parallel. That's why I wanted to mention it. But now we do have enough space for our next generation to think that, do we want to pass on that trauma, or do we want to process it at this point? So I see like this parallel, what you are saying. I think it might be a good... Do you have something to say about it? If you
No, I find that actually I've read not so much about it, but I've read about it before. And it's a really good point, and we also have to take into consideration the amount of conditioning that there is when it comes to this, you know. Of course, maybe, I don't know, hundreds of years ago, the conditioning that people had was much more stronger when it came to enslaving other people, you know, or being sexist or something like that. But with time, as the conditioning goes down, it's easier to talk about this subject. When it comes to exploiting animals, the conditioning is still very strong. That's why it becomes a polarizing subject, as you said.
Yes,
but
yes, yeah. So maybe in now coming to the modern context, even though if you fundamentally believe that, ethically it is death or a killing of something, a life form is fine if it's not suffered. Okay, maybe you want to, maybe that's what we believe. So to reduce this kind of friction and to reduce this kind of argument, I think it would be interesting that regardless of that, what is the role of actually sustaining a food habit like that in this era? I think if we start from that point of view that, even if whatever, if you can, we can believe that, okay, that's fine. But still, practically, let's say you just want to talk about yourself and your food source and the planet you are at. I mean, how much this kind of factory farming or this kind of diet is impacting our planet and sustainability?
Yeah. So there's so many studies. To begin with, a study that was published by the United Nations itself, they came to the conclusion and they said to prevent the worst impacts of climate change, the world has to switch to a plant-based diet. And the reason why the studies are showing this is because the 60 billion land animals that we are breeding into existence every single year demand so much resources until they are killed and consumed. So, for example, 15,000 liters of water for 1 kilo of beef. Is it really worth it? 15,000 kilos of water, So the impact is massive. When it comes to the marine animals, we kill 2.7 trillion marine animals every single year. That's a number that the human brain cannot even comprehend. The only way to understand what that is to bring it down to per second. That's 84,000 marine animals per second, which is why scientists are now saying, by 2048, we're going to have fishless oceans. Again, when it comes to sustainability and environmental impact, up to 46% of the plastic in the ocean comes from discarded fishing nets. It's interesting because we have all these people who want to stop using plastic straws to save the fish, but no one wants to stop eating the fish to save the fish, which is a much more direct and impactful conclusion. When it comes to all the waste that comes out of the slaughterhouses, the farms, it goes directly into our ecosystems. It's the number one cause of creating ocean dead zones, number one cause of species extinction. The Amazon rainforest, 90% of the deforestation is caused by animal agriculture. The recent fires in the Amazon rainforest were also admitted by farmers. They were doing it to make room for more cattle grazing, for more crops to grow to feed these animals. Some people say, soy is destroying the Amazon rainforest and vegans are eating soy. Well, 92% of that soy is going for animal agriculture. It's the food that we are growing for these animals. So the impact is massive. There's enough food. Like, we grow enough food to feed 11 billion people, but the thing is, we're putting it into the wrong place. We're giving it to the animals so that we can eat some animals instead. And most of those crops, a lot of these crops actually come from countries where 24,000 children die every day because of malnutrition, and the food is just being exported to be given to a cow so that someone in the West can have a piece of steak. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying if everyone went vegan, suddenly there's not going to be any world hunger. But it is a fact that we're wasting so much resources just for our taste buds. Is it really worth it? Scientists are saying we have 11 years to start really seeing climate collapse. What are we going to do about it? I love the campaigns against let's say all the industries are destroying the environment, but a lot of these campaigns are based on industries such as coal mining, for example, that we don't really have direct impact on. Like, what are you and I doing every single day that we can right now stop from doing that's going to impact the coal mining industry? Not much. But when it comes to animal agriculture, we have massive power. We're doing it at least 3 times a day. There was a year and a half ago, I think in October 2018, there was a study by the Oxford University, biggest of its kind, comparing human diets and their impact on the environment. The lead author said that going vegan is the single most important thing you can do to reduce your impact on the environment, more than buying an electric car and more than reducing your flights. So these are the numbers and the statistics that are coming from peer-reviewed studies. It's not coming from PETA or Animal Equality or vegan organizations, Personally, I never take my data or the numbers that I use from vegan organizations because I don't need to. The science is there. So yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you might be able to clarify that a lot of Amazon jungle has been impacted by vegetation and kind of an ecological desert which we create, plant certain one specific thing. So that also impact a lot of wildlife. But I was thinking that a lot of it is agriculture, but you're saying that the agriculture is actually not over there used for the humans. It's actually used for animals.
Most of it.
Yes. Okay, yeah, most of it. But if we do shift in this huge capacity, let's say it seems harder that everyone would be able to shift that quick. So it's a gradual process. Yes. But okay, hopefully we'll find a way, like a nice transition way and more sustainable way. But for the sake of argument, in 20 years, maybe 50% of the population, is I know. But let's for the sake of argument. Let's reduce it 40%.
Yeah. We can stick to 50. I don't like that.
Okay. So 50-50. Yeah. Okay, let's do that. So 50% of the population, let's say, is now on a vegan diet. But just looking from a practical point of view of sustainability, what resources we have available, do you think that would still impact hugely as compared to what land areas we need for animals and what land areas we need just if we are only having vegetarian diet? Would that also affect the deforestation? Like, how is the...
All right. So if, let's say, 50% of the world was eating a plant-based diet, then we would need much less land for agriculture. Think about it this way. There's almost 10 times more of these land animals that we're breeding into existence, 60 billion of them, almost 10 times as humans. Do you know how much these animals eat per day? They eat so much, like a cow, a pig. They have to keep on eating. So compared to how much one human eats a day, it's nothing, I mean, it's much more. What the human eats is nothing compared to the animals. So the amount that you're producing is going to be less. But not only that, because let's say now we're breeding 30 billion land animals because half the world is plant-based, well, there's already all this space that you're not going to need them anymore because 30 billion land animals less need food, which means that if 3 to 4 billion humans were eating plant-based, you have more than enough space. And if anything, you can use all the spaces that were being used to grow crops for animals to reforest the earth. That's an important thing as well, because I don't want to make it seem like if the world went vegan, it's going to solve everything. It's not a fact. It's not going to be like that. It's not like we switch and then it's over. No, we have to reforest the earth. Not only that, we have to look into monocultures. How badly are they affecting the soil, the environment, and everything else. So I would definitely say it's not going to solve everything, but I would also say it's definitely the first step that we should be taking to go forward.
So this was all about this point was about that, okay, if we even remove human suffering out of the question, even if you're looking from a very pragmatic point of view, these are the scenarios, these are the things we should be really thinking. I mean, even if you're thinking about your future generation, or even if you're thinking just as your individual responsibility for being in the world and being gifted, maybe if you consider your life to be gift, like what are we leaving after we pass by. So now let's include the factor of animal suffering into this conversation by talking more about factory farming. And I don't think I have met anyone at this point who I've talked to and have explained. Maybe some people didn't really know the extent of what factory farming means, and that is actually a big spread thing. Like, not many people still, even if they know a little bit, they try to push it away unconsciously, and of course it's a painful thing to think about it. So maybe it would be interesting if you somehow explain us the concept of factory farming and the ground realities, because I'm assuming you.
So basically, factory farming is basically putting as many animals in one place as possible just to make it more profitable. Ethically speaking, of course, when it comes to animal rights, it's not a question of welfare. We don't fight against factory farming, we fight against animal farming in general. But of course, as you said, the majority of the population is against factory farming. But still, they wouldn't really think about it in their day-to-day lives because they're so conditioned, of course. Or maybe they're ignorant, they don't know, they don't have the information, it's not their fault. One thing we don't know about factory farming is it's one of the worst crimes, I would say, of humans. One of the worst crimes. Another thing that we know now is that, this is where it gets really interesting. If you're going to eat animal products, it's more sustainable to eat factory farm products because they did the studies and they looked at the numbers. If you have a cow grazing, outside, first of all, you're no longer using all the food that the factory farms use because, they're using antibiotics as well and growth hormones and everything. So the cow lives much less and then gets sent to slaughter than the cow that is living outside in the fields eating from the grass. And the more the cow outside lives, the more she or he will eat, drink, and also produce methane, which is up to 100 times worse as a greenhouse gas in the atmosphere than CO2. So the impact of a cow that is outside is much worse on the environment than a factory farm. And this is where it gets really interesting because a lot of people, when I'm doing activism, I start talking to someone and say, but I don't eat factory farm, I only eat local food, Like, why is that? And they say, well, I care about animals, but also for the environment. Well, then you're going to have a contradiction because you care about the animals, so you're not buying from factory farms. I would say if you care, you should never buy in the first place. But then you care about the environment, and if you do, then you should buy from factory farms, Okay. So it becomes like a difficult situation where people have to realize, okay, factory farming, of course, is a horrible thing. It's literally made to. I mean, I've been inside one factory farm of pigs, and it's just like just rows after rows after. I have actually not only pigs, chickens as well. I think up to 150,000 egg-laying chickens just in cages next to each other. It's such an intense place. It's such an emotional thing to experience. And then you walk out and you realize, like, what have we done? Like, what are we doing to them? How could we justify this? By the way, I used to love eggs. Were my favorite meal as a non-vegan. Loved eating chickens as well. Loved eating steak as well. Went hunting. So I'm not coming from a moral high ground or anything. I wasn't the most vegan person like growing up. But when it comes to factory farming, it's a horrible thing. And I wish everyone who's against factory farming would realize that, all right, if I'm against it, I will stop. But also, if I stop because I believe it's wrong to harm animals, then as the next step, or immediately, also stop consuming all animal products altogether.
So there's a clear dilemma over here. But do you think if we stop consuming these, especially the animals we have bred into existence, what would be the future of it? I mean, do you think that means some of the people would still eat, so we would still have to keep them?
Yeah. So what would happen, as you said earlier, like, it's not going to happen overnight. It's a gradual thing. And these industries, they're just like, they're following the demand, So as the demand goes down, so will the supply. And eventually, if we're breeding 60 billion now, maybe in 5 years it becomes hopefully 50 billion, and then that goes down and down and down until, if it ever reaches zero, it will be zero. If not, if it finds a balance between 10 to 20 billion, I hope that's not the case. But the industry will only breed whatever the customers are demanding. This is also why I really like concentrating on the customers, because they're not just producing for the sake of producing. They're producing because there's profit in it. And if we just take that profit away, they're going to switch to something else.
Okay, so if we move, let's say, as we're saying, we're moving towards this one scenario. We're not talking about like the ultimate solution here. We're talking about the first step.
Yes.
And the problem maybe sometimes is that, okay, well, we can imagine that everyone, is, let's say, a vegetarian diet. That doesn't solve the problem, as you said. Do you think that one of our biggest problem ultimately is at this point overpopulation on this planet? I mean, what's your view on this?
Yeah, good question. I do believe that overpopulation is a problem. I've read a few articles about it. I also believe that it's not always overpopulation. It's having kids in certain areas. For example, a full family in Ethiopia, for example, would consume so much less than a couple and their child in the middle of London. Their impact on the environment, whether that's from, transportation to iPads and computers and laptops and toys and this and that. The impact of a Western family is so much higher than the impact of other areas in the world. I do believe that there's a certain question of overpopulation that we should be looking at. I think, if you look at a lot of wild animals, when they live in a certain area and they realize that they have overconsumed the amount, like the plants that they rely on, like herbivore animals, at one point they start breeding less because they understand, okay, we have to slow down now until nature finds itself again, and then we continue. We humans, we're just one after the other. We don't have the knowledge about it. We're so disconnected. You said we forget that we're animals. We're so disconnected from our own nature that we don't even think is it really smart in this day and age to bring more people into existence? So I do believe overpopulation is a problem, both because of the consumption of animal products, but also because of the consumption of electronics, or just the impact of every single human being on the environment.
Yeah, well, the one thing which I noticed when I moved to UK from Pakistan was that how many times I was filling up my dustbin.
Yes.
I mean, that was a very strange realization. 2 years later, when I was really integrated somehow in this society, I was really frustrated. I was seriously, because I remember, because I was the one who is generally, because the youngest one in our house, so used to take out
the trash.
Yeah, take out the trash over there. And then here, I'm thinking how many packs I'm just packing. And that was one of, just the small thing was that, okay, just how much trash
definitely
one person is generating.
That's
here.
So true.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, the other aspect of a question would be about, I find it's if we want people to transition somehow, I find it hard. Somehow I find it hard. It's a harder way if we somehow encourages the guilt aspect of humanity and then ask them to transition for some reason. I don't know. It's my intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this conversation does bring a lot of guilt. Do you think, is there a way where we do recognize the guilt we feel, but maybe not actually get bogged down by the one thing which could allow us to move forward? So guilt is brilliant to show you the mirror.
Yeah.
But now it actually eats your own capacity to move forward. So.
Good question. Actually, I do believe that guilt is very important, because once you feel guilt, the reason why you feel guilt is because you feel a certain responsibility. And you're not going to change until you realize how much responsibility you have. However, I do believe that if an activist or anyone talking to someone else realizes the person got to that point of feeling guilt, they should follow that with motivation. You can't just guilt someone and then just leave them and go. There's an amazing quote that says, people don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel. So you can do street activism and have someone crying their eyes out watching the videos and feeling horrible about what they've done. If they didn't walk away with a feeling of feeling motivated, like, I'm going to change this, I'm going to be a better person, I'm going to stop consuming animal products, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be an activist, they're just going to walk away upset. And that's just going to take them down. It's not going to necessarily make them see, all right, what should I do about this? So I do think that we as activists have the more responsibility to encourage and motivate others to take steps forward, not just stop at guilt.
Yeah, so maybe it would be a good point to make this distinction, as you have already done, that there are some places where it's more sustainable to, let's say, have kids, or more sustainable to have certain type of diets. The reason why you are not actually doing a tour in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh at this point is because it is a hard place to actually find that kind of food. So you do believe somehow in a shifting responsibility, or maybe at some places there are more responsibility. No, go for it.
So I actually have two friends who have been traveling in India for I think more than a year now, meeting local activists. I've never been to India or Pakistan or anywhere else in that area, so I couldn't speak for them. But they are one of my closest friends, so we speak almost on a daily basis. You'd be surprised by how easy it is for the people there. But I think that's the same everywhere. I think what happens is once you go vegan, there's this like a period of 7 to 8, 9 days where you're like, I don't know what to eat, like you freak. Like I went vegan, I ate pasta the first 3 days. Suddenly my mind, like my brain just blocked, I couldn't think of anything else, Even when I wasn't vegan, there were so many vegan things that I was eating. So as long as you have access to the staple plant-based foods like rice and beans and lentils and when it comes to, I know, like there's so many Indian dishes that are vegan as well, plant-based foods. Once you pass that 1 week to 10 days, then it's done. Then it's over. For the rest of your life what you can and you can't eat, or what you choose not to eat, of course. Personally, I'm not doing these talks, let's say, in those countries, for the same reason why my friends are also shifting their type of activism. They used to sometimes give talks, but now they're shifting into working with local activists so that the local activists do these things, because it's much better for like an Indian citizen to identify with another Indian activist and say, yeah, of course, this person also lives in my city. If they can be vegan, I can be vegan, So my friends are concentrating on that now, and which is really amazing. It's also giving like a huge platform for all these activists to realize they're not alone, There's activists all around the world. So I think it's important for people all around the world to do activism or help local activists in whatever way they can. I also believe that, for example, if I'm in the UK or in Belgium or anywhere else in Europe, I have experienced how easy it is. So I can tell people, if someone tells me in the UK, yeah, I want to go vegan, but like I love sausages, I can tell him where to go to get vegan sausages,
Yes.
But again, not like that small inconvenience should be an obstacle, but it's good to easily point out what people can do to make the transition easier and faster.
True. The one aspect I was mentioning is that it's comparatively, some places might be a bit harder to, if you're...
Yes,
yeah,
definitely.
Definitely.
For example, I'm sure like there are some countries where you're not gonna walk into the supermarket and see all the options that you have here in the UK. Like, as I was saying, I was at Newcastle University yesterday. They had a small supermarket inside, and I wanted to have something quick to eat. And it took me 15 minutes to decide, because there are so many options in just a small supermarket and small building in the university. I was telling my friends, you guys are so spoiled, what is this? Like, inside the university. But obviously, probably in another country, as you said, they're not going to have the same options. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, one thing maybe it would be good to bring it is that if we let's say, is there a place because you've done hunting, you know, if we do we need somehow at some point, at some scenario, you know, people who do eat meat through hunting process, which is completely removed from whatever society's factory farming is, and so it's sustainable. So you solve the question of sustainability because there'll be less number of people who might be doing it. Now, why they want to do it, the motivations, and I mean, it's very complicated because they explain it in a very different way. They say they do actually love it, and that's one of the reasons why they do it. Somehow feel more connected to the nature. But would you think there is a space for that kind of space?
Yeah, absolutely not. Because, I mean, the only argument that I have seen to getting close to kind of justifying hunting is when they say population control. You know, there's a certain type of certain species of animal that is getting out of control, and then the government or the state gives permits to hunters to kill as many as they can, or a certain amount at least. The reason why I think that even that isn't justified is the following. If we are going to justify killing a species because of their impact on the environment, then why is it not justified to kill humans because of our impact on the environment? We are the worst species out of all of them, you know, that are destroying the planet more than any others. Probably all of them put together, combined, we're destroying more. But we would never justify going around killing people and saying, you know, we got to help the environment, we got to put the numbers down. We'd never do that. Now, what is the other solution? I think it's very simple. The reason why they don't use the other solution is because animals don't have rights and they're not considered in our moral community. So they don't put enough effort and funding into the other solution, which would be spaying and neutering these animals, you know. Is it still like, I'm not happy with that, but I would really prefer you neuter an animal and then release them again and let them live their lives than you just kill them. Because at the end of the day, you're not here to act like, okay, we're destroying more, but this poor animal, you know, they're also getting out of control, so we're going to kill them now. Now, another thing we have to take into consideration is that a lot of times these animals that are being hunted because of their population number, they're being hunted because there's no more predators left. And what is the main reason that predators are being killed? It's because, for example, in the States, they kill millions of wild animals, predators, to protect livestock farms. So from the beginning, animal agriculture is still the cause of the problem, you know, and you can get the numbers. I forgot which department it was in the US government, but they have all the numbers of how many wolves they kill, how many bears, you know. They like massacre by the millions to protect animal farms. So, and then what happens? There's a certain animal that is usually the prey of these wolves or these other animals that start getting out of control. And then we end up killing them as well. Well, if you didn't have animal agriculture in the first place, you wouldn't have to deal with these things. So I think what happens with these scenarios is we're just dealing with the symptoms. That's not a solution, you know, so yeah.
Okay, yeah, brilliant. So maybe it might be to maybe go into more specification now towards what might be the misconceptions people would have, which you have heard about vegan diet, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to how diverse it is.
Yeah.
It might be really good to really hear from you because you have a lot of experience.
Yeah. So again, number one cause, as you said, is a number one misconception is nutrition. Everyone thinks, not everyone, a lot of people think it's not healthy. Well, the leading nutrition and dietetic centers around the world have all confirmed, including the British Dietetic Association, have confirmed that a balanced vegan diet supports healthy living in people of all ages, including pregnancy, including infancy. What that inherently means is that eating animal products is completely unnecessary. So these are not vegan organizations. You know, British Dietetic Association, they're not a vegan organization. American Dietetic Association, they're not. So all around the world, they're saying you can still be vegan and be healthy, you know. plus even healthier in some cases. If you're eating a whole foods plant-based diet, for example, that's one of the healthiest diets. I was checking some of the stats when it comes to the UK. 1 in 2 in the UK will be diagnosed of cancer in this day and age. And cancer kills around, I think, 450 patients every single day, making it the second cause of death after heart disease. Literally the only diet that has proven scientifically to reverse, prevent, or cure heart disease is a whole foods plant-based vegan diet. There's a reason why all these doctors around the world are telling their patients, you want to get off the medication, just go vegan, eat whole foods plant-based diet. The cholesterol issues, atherosclerosis, there's so many health-related issues that are caused from eating animals that could be prevented or even reversed if you just eat a plant-based diet. So it's really unfortunate, but it also shows how much propaganda this industry has been using against us, telling you that you need to eat meat for protein. In 2020, we still think that you need to eat meat. I mean, I'm not blaming anyone who thinks that, but that's how far they have conditioned us. They have actually managed to convince adult human beings, including myself in the past, that for some reason I, as an adult human being, need to drink the breast milk of a mother of another animal. That's how, if that's not brainwashing and propaganda, I don't know what is, And again, don't take my word for it. Go do the research. Go read the articles of the British Dietetic Association, American Dietetic Association. Look at their stance on healthy, balanced vegan diets. They're all going to say the same thing. So that's one of the first, the highest misconception, I would say. The second one, I would say convenience. A lot of people think or believe that it's not going to be very convenient. But again, I promise, after that first week or 10 days, you're going to get used to it. Because once you know what are the things that contain eggs or milk and things like that, then you're done. You're done forever, and especially if you live in the UK. Literally, I've been coming to the UK back and forth for the past almost 2 years. Not even once did I have a situation where I was like, damn, I don't know what I'm going to eat. It just, it doesn't exist. It hasn't happened yet. And it's only getting easier. So convenience, although the first days you're going to think it's inconvenient, I promise you'll get over it.
The other thing also is about the diversity of vegan diet.
Oh yeah,
which I was blown away by that. It's because what we have heard till now is that it's just few things.
Yeah, you go eat your grass.
Yeah.
That's what they say. But then you look into it and you find out there's 75,000 edible plants, and we're obsessed about eating 5 dead animals and what comes out of their bodies. I have never eaten a diet that is as strict and limited as a non-vegan diet. I used to eat the same thing. You eat meat and rice, you have a chicken sandwich, you have eggs, you have some yogurt with something else. That's it, over and over and over again. I went vegan, and all of a sudden I didn't even go vegan because of the food. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, the amount of things I can eat, this is amazing. Obviously it took some time until I realized that, but the abundance of plant-based foods is just everywhere. All the vegetables, the legumes and grains and nuts and seeds, the amount of things you can make with them. Of non-vegan milk, what do you get? Goat milk and cow milk, most of the places. Maybe in some countries, camel milk, or I don't know. The same things, 3. Well, you get oat milk, rice milk, coconut milk, hazelnut milk, soy milk, almond milk, hemp milk, and these are actually healthy, unlike the breast milk of other animals, which is just not made for us, So definitely not a limited diet, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, two things, and then one scenario to maybe encompass, because we talked about the easiness of these things. I do want to point what I feel may be a very hard thing to transition, emotionally, from an emotional point of view. But if you have chickens, let's say, I guess that is the scenario which I've heard, and I feel like that this seems like that if you have just chicken in your home and house and they give egg, there's no harm in eating those eggs because they're just going to go to waste anyway, if I'm correct.
finish and then I would did
this
you
is my
finish?
question.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
good question. So backyard eggs, the situation of like, yeah, you have some chickens in your backyard and they're laying some eggs. What do you do with them? Is it okay to take them? Is it ethical to take them? Um, Basically what happens, I don't believe it's ethical, and for the following reason. The eggs are the unfertilized reproductive system of chickens. It means that there's no life in it. It's not fertilized. It's the equivalent of the human ovulation. And similar to humans, similar to women, chickens are supposed to have their ovulation between 12 to 16 times a year. But because of over the past decades or 100 or 200 years, they have been so specifically bred or genetically modified. In this day and age, chickens lay up to 360 eggs.
Mm-hmm.
So they have their ovulation almost every single day of the year. Now, you and I would never understand what that feels like, but any woman who ovulates can understand and identify how unpleasant that is. Not only that, the process of laying an egg is very painful for a chicken, simply because of the proportion of the size, their body and the egg. It's not an easy process. It's a painful one. And in the process of laying an egg, they also lose a lot of nutrients, mostly calcium, because of the shell. So when you take away the egg, and this has been observed by a lot of people, when you take away the eggs from your backyard chickens, it makes them anxious and makes them feel like they have to lay another one. And in the process of laying another one, they're going to be suffering. Now, other than that, what I've done before with rescued chickens, you take the egg and you break it in front of them for them, and they eat it back. They love it. They go crazy on it because they can gain some of the nutrients back for their own body, the ones that they lost specifically. So not our eggs, it's their eggs. So if you actually want to be mindful and careful and help them, if there's like some eggs that are just there, just break it in front of them and they'll eat it. Now, another thing that is not specifically on a physical harm level is the idea that the second you take something from an animal, you are confirming that animals are similar to resources. And in that process, you are taking part in speciesism. So any person who is consuming animal products is not helping the world become more anti-speciesist, So for ideological reasons as well, I don't consider it moral.
Okay. The other part I was thinking is that many people have tried it in this day and age, and I would trust them. I would just take what they are saying on their word. I've now been them when they were being vegan every day, but I do consider them morally accurate when they're reporting back. And some of them find it really easy, and some of them found it not hard in a way that they couldn't actually find what they're eating. They're actually the people who could afford it most easily, or the people who just happen to have better community of vegan people around it, but they just somehow the body or somehow whatever the report is. Now, scientifically, it's like some of the studies would say something and some of the studies would say the other thing. It's a murky waters out there. But if that's the case with various certain individuals, that makes it harder for them because they do believe it, if that's the reason why they have been doing it for 3 to 4 years. And some of them were doing it for 5 years, and then they just have to somehow, shift on other kind of diet. I mean, what is this?
Yeah. So, again, scientifically speaking, doctors until today are looking for one medical condition that would make it impossible for someone to be vegan, and there isn't any. There are indeed medical conditions that make it complicated. If you have certain allergies, of course it could be complicated, but not impossible. But again, that's a very, very small percentage of humans who can't do it because of certain medical allergies, and still it would only make it complicated. Now, when it comes to people who do it for some time and then they realize that their body isn't reacting well to it, if the science is saying that you can do this and be healthy, and you realize that you don't feel healthy, what does that mean? There's something you're not doing well. It's very simple. Go to a nutritionist, a plant-based nutritionist, a plant-based medical doctor, and tell them, I've been vegan, I don't feel very well, I want to do a blood test. Do a blood test, check your levels, check your iron. In women, for example, it's very common to have iron deficiency issues. Not only vegan women. Actually, I have friends who got rid of their iron deficiency when they switched to a vegan diet. But again, that doesn't mean that's going to happen with everyone. Some people can have that difficulty. So do a blood test, check what it is that your body is missing, and then work on fixing that instead of giving up on the diet and start eating animals instead, which has been proven scientifically as an unhealthy source of food. So this whole thing of stopping from being vegan started around a year ago, actually, when a bunch of social media influencers or YouTubers started giving up, let's say, the vegan plant-based diet and making health claims. Some of these people were fasting. There was one person, excuse me for the vocabulary, but he was drinking his own piss and fasting for up to 30 days. And then he made a video saying he's not vegan anymore because he ate some animal products and he felt better. And everyone was like, you literally fasted, I think it was 36 days. You depleted your body of all the nutrition and the nutrients, actually, and then you're blaming the vegan diet for it, you know? There was another YouTuber, a woman who made all these claims like, it did this to me and it did that to me. A quite famous medical doctor made a response video destroying her, telling her, are you aware that you are not specialized to make these claims? You don't have the right to make these claims. There's hundreds of thousands of people who follow you. You have such a big responsibility and you're spreading misinformation about nutrition. And the doctor actually explained why she had what she had. There was another case, again, very similar. A vegan nutritionist actually, who was also a famous YouTuber, reached out to her and said, you know, I can offer you free help to help you get back to vegan. And the person just didn't take it. You know, like, what is happening here? It's very simple. Another one, actually, a third one, she made some claims, you know, I don't feel good, I feel weak, this and that. People went on her website and checked all her own meal plans, okay? And it turns out that her own plans were in calorie deficit. So she wasn't even consuming enough food like that she needs, like a human needs in the day-to-day life. And then she's surprised that she's feeling weak. Of course you're gonna feel weak, you know? You can eat the healthiest food. If you don't eat enough calories a day, you're not gonna be healthy. So when these things started, what happened was some people who were maybe not eating well said, oh, I think I had the same symptom, you know? But then instead of talking to a professional who understands the subject, they just gave up on the diet. Unfortunately, this is one of the downsides of social media.
Yeah, this is the reason why I wanted to brought it up, because this has been mentioned a lot of time, as you said, last year or a couple of years.
Yeah.
So maybe end it.
Yeah.
The humans have been eating and hunting and different kind of diets. We know that we have wide variety of diet, and probably mostly we used to eat vegetables. Or vegetable diet.
Yeah.
That's why still, even really recently, it was told to us that you should limit your meat as much as possible. So, but the meat was part of our existence since we were very young. So it is something which is, as you say, condition-wise, and also part of our bodies forever. So to ask this step, where whatever the reason is, where it's your love for other life form, where it's speciation, where it is sustainability, whatever it is, and if we are considering that if you leave all of that and just look for your own reason in your heart, and you think that, okay, if I am imagining, in future, I mean, I've met people, they said, I wish I could have a photosynthesis kind of a diet from, I was like, okay, this is funny, but it does, let for a thought experiment, if you do have a diet in a way that it is not something where you do mass vegetation, which creates an Armageddon for insects also. There's like being alive is just...
As long as you're alive, there's some impact.
Yes, there's some impact. There's no, but let's say you get to the point where there is like the minimum aspect of impact and you are somehow type 2 civilization, according to... Yeah. So still, I think even everyone agrees to that 100%. it's a very hard thing we are asking. The only point why I wanted to mention it, because I feel like it too. So I'm sure many people other would feel like it. And we do say that it is, once you make the step, the things are available. You can definitely. So we pointed that all out. But I think it is worth putting this kind of pain, or putting this kind of the resistance and letting go, the difficulty of the task, maybe paying its due right now, so that it doesn't feel like a imbalanced conversation. Like, it's the reason why maybe many people resist is because this is since our human brain have been eating on these bone marrows of dead animals. That was our niche, supposedly. That's somehow have become one with our tendons and everything. So, I mean, yes, we do agree. Not me and you. I mean, as a human beings, we do agree in what steps you said we should take. But I wanted to mention it, that it does seems like it's a hard step to ask, and that is why maybe you think that you want to dedicate your life to something like that. I mean, am I getting it to from a angle which makes sense? Or
yeah, I understand what you're saying. So when it comes to how long we have been doing this for, there's so many things that we have done since we can remember. We have killed since we know. I mean, we have raped, enslaved, tortured, stolen, all the horrible things that we're doing today. We have always done it. But just because we've done something for such a long time doesn't necessarily mean we should continue. Another thing is that our bodies didn't really survive because of meat or animal products. They survived despite animal products. There was a study that came out a few years ago that said our brains grew larger because we ate meat. The study was immediately debunked by an actual peer-reviewed study that showed that our brains, because of the fact that there's nothing in meat that the brain needs for it to function, our brain needs carbohydrates, like starches, so because we need starches, and cooking food and eating starches is what made our brains become bigger. So even evolution-wise, plant-based foods is what help us become where we are. I do want to say, as a small note, I read that study around a year and a half ago. So if it wasn't starches, it was something related to starches. If I'm wrong, you can check it out. So when it comes to whether or not we should say, okay, maybe minimize it as much as you can to make it more, let's say, acceptable for some people, I would argue that we need rights for animals. We should consider animals as part of our moral community. The weird thing is that some of them are, like dogs and cats. You can't hurt them. You can go to jail if you hurt them. So they are in some way a part of our moral community, but then the others are not, just because of their species, which again is not really an argument. Now, one thing that we have to know is that it is a justice-based movement. It's a movement based on justice and rights. And to see if we believe what you suggested would be something you're comfortable with, we have to test if it's morally consistent, right? Quick question. Do you believe we would ever reach a world that is completely free of racism?
I believe that we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I personally don't. I don't believe that we're ever going to have a world, unfortunately, and I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. I don't believe we're ever going to have a world that is completely free of racism, completely free of sexism, completely free of other types of discrimination. And again, I hope I turn out to be wrong. However, that doesn't mean that if I'm talking to someone who let's say I have a friend who made a racist remark, I would talk to him about it. I would tell him, for these reasons, what you said was wrong. If he's being a bit defensive about it or not very accepting, let's say, my message, I would never say, you know what, maybe twice a week you can be racist. So that's a reducitarian approach. I believe if we switch to reducitarianism, the animal rights message loses its value. What I would do in the example you gave, because I also, if you tell me right now, you know what, Seb, I like to talk, I see your points, but I'm not gonna go vegan. I'm gonna reduce it a bit. I would not still fight you, but I would also make sure that you're aware that that is not enough. So what I would say is, unfortunately, I can't control you. You're going to walk out of this store. Like, you can do, even if you say, I'm going to go vegan, I still don't know if you're going to do it. So what I would say is, whatever you decide to do after finding out, whatever it is, if it's not like veganism, keep in mind that the minimum, that your goal should be veganism. If for some reason you believe you need more than 1 week to do that, I would hope that you don't do that. But if that's the only way for you to go vegan, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna bash you for it, you know? I'm still gonna encourage you, as we talked earlier.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna stay in the guilt area. I'm gonna encourage you. I'm gonna stay in touch with you. I'm gonna put you in touch with some friends that live in the same area, send you some information, some resources, some documentaries, you know? Again, because the reducitarianism is, I think, extremely dangerous for any movement, really any movement. I've forgotten which country it was. There was an issue with men beating up their wives. And the local municipality, if I'm not mistaken, they said, you know what if we just say, like, they can only beat up their wives like 3 times a week, you know? And it backlashed. Like, what? No, you should just say, don't beat up your wife, you know? Even if people don't do it straight away, the message should be clear of ending the injustice, not controlling the injustice. So again, if you're someone who's not going to go vegan straight away, just watch the documentaries. While you're doing the transition, watch the documentaries. Don't take my word for it. Read the studies, see the peer-reviewed studies and everything, and then keep in mind that the end goal is veganism.
Brilliant. Thank you, Seb.
Thank you so
so much.
Okay,
Thank you. Brilliant. Bye, people.